There's a headline template that appears with horrifying regularity in Australian media. It goes something like, "Man and woman found dead in suspected murder-suicide." Today on Australian True Crime, we speak to a woman whose mother was the subject of one of those headlines in August 2017. Marilyn Burdon was an outgoing 70-year-old mother and grandmother with several degrees, including a master's in criminology. She enjoyed a successful career in which she advised various government bodies about crime prevention in the community. One night in 2010, she was introduced by mutual friends to Charles Bisucci. He was around the same age as Marilyn and presented himself as a successful lawyer with interesting passions and an eccentric way about him. Although they never really warmed to him, Marilyn's family discovered there was much more to Bisucci than met the eye. They discovered that during the inquest into their mother's death in 2021, and her daughter, Rebecca Burdon, joins us to talk about it. This is Australian True Crime. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is created, the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And a warning, this episode of the podcast contains graphic descriptions of violence.
She was fun, she liked academics. She had an inquiring mind and, she was interesting. She liked to have fun and muck around as well. So, she was very involved in all of the three of our lives.
How old were you when she went back to uni to do her master's in criminology?
Oh, God, I would have been somewhere in my mid-20s. In fact, at one point when I was doing my undergrad, we were in the same class, in a criminology class together, and we just pretended we didn't know it. Well, she pretended she didn't know me, rather.
It's normally the other way around.
Exactly.
So she was a pretty cool lady.
She was, yep.
Your dad's a doctor?
Yep.
And they were married for many years and then separated and went their own ways?
Yep, they did. That was in around 2000, yeah.
Was she dating much after that?
Oh, on and off. But, there was not many good blokes about.
I hear that.
Yeah, she worked in crime prevention in a couple of different councils, some projects to do with sort of youth drug use and reducing crime around that. So, yeah, she was really interested in that stuff, and she did some short courses on cybercrime and something like when the internet was just all new, and it's like, oh, what's that all about?
Yeah. She wanted to know.
Yeah, she did. So, but she wasn't working at the time. She just turned 70 in the May that she died. So a few months later, all this happened, and she met old mate.
According to the coroner's report, it was 2010, and that a mutual friend at a dinner party introduced them.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And as I say, this is every person's nightmare, that someone they love will just kind of find themselves in this situation, I guess, meeting someone at a dinner party surrounded by friends, so thinking the best of everything.
Yeah. So, look, he was around for a while, but, the honest truth is that we being the children, there's three of us, weren't thrilled with him. So, I didn't really know him very well, even though he was on the scene for quite a while.
Charles Bisucci. Certainly there are police reports dating back to well before he met your mum from the police who described his house as odd, having things like suits of armour and things in his house.
Yep. I think he was some sort of crazy collector of weird stuff.
Did you tell your mum that you thought he was weird? How does that play out when your mother, who is not only an adult but a very smart, accomplished, independent adult, gets into a relationship with a guy that you don't really like? How did that play out?
At times not well. It was difficult. It was, we didn't ever want him involved in any family gatherings. He wasn't ever invited. I honestly, 7 at most, I oversaw him at any event at all, even at a door or something. So it did cause friction at times because we didn't want him at Christmas and this sort of things. But we just had to manage it.
Yeah, because you didn't want to lose your relationship with your mum.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know, there'd be snippets of things that would occur where I'd raise alarm bells to mum, and there would be, oh no, he's all right, and, you know, justifying the relationship, I guess. And I think partly that was around, you know, they did do interesting things, they went to interesting places, you know, he had interests that she did as well. So she was on her own, it was company, but I think she underestimated. I mean, I'm sure there's things that went on that I have no idea about. There has to have been.
Mm.
But ultimately, I think he just saw her as his financial future, let's put it that way.
There's one former friend who said that he described her as his superannuation.
That's right. Made me sick.
Now we know that he was telling people he was a lawyer when actually he'd been banned from practicing law some years earlier.
Yeah.
We know he had no financial stability of his own. Now we know that he had domestic violence in his past. What were the things that were raising flags for you, though? What did you know?
That he was unhinged. And I say that because I remember having, I think it was a Mother's Day lunch or something. My brother, myself, him and Mum, we had met up and had lunch at the pub or something. He was very, very odd. Let's put it that way. This time he was more unhinged than usual. He was acting almost like he had some sort of hypomania, you know, he was right off the beam. I remember another time we went out and he was reading out poems to my mum and stuff, like in front of us, and we're like, oh my God, this is insane. Plus everything else that I knew about him, or his history. He had problems with the family court. I don't know at what point I knew that there had been an intervention order, but at some point I didn't know that. And I did know at some point that he'd had firearms. So those were always big issues for me.
Yeah. Was your mum embarrassed by his behaviour?
Yes, I think so.
They lived separately though, didn't they, for most of the time?
Well, for all of it until the very end, yes. I mean, he was just doing whatever he pleased, would sort of disappear at times and, you know, be uncontactable and then pop up again. And he had a couple of jobs, I think, in the time, but just an absolute low life, really. He was duplicitous. He was just a shyster. You know, he's just out to rip everyone off, talk shit constantly.
Were you aware at that time, was your mum ever aware that he had another relationship going on the whole time?
I think she had a fair idea, yeah. She knew that things were happening, but he denied it.
I was wondering that, given that he used to disappear for periods of time. There was a lady called Ms. Catapan who was in a relationship with him before he met your mum and for the entirety of the relationship with your mum.
They were definitely having a form of a relationship, whether it was a sexual or just friends, I don't know. She seemed quite possessive of him, I think. She would send messages telling her to basically keep her hands off her man and this sort of stuff.
It's a lot of drama for your mum to be involved in.
So much drama. It's ridiculous. And it was ridiculous.
I mean, I don't want to be ageist or, yeah.
Well, that's what we're saying. This is ridiculous. Like, honestly, Mum, what are you doing?
And what do you think she was doing? What was going on from her perspective that she's putting up with all this?
Look, I think part of it was having company, to be honest. I do know at times, certainly in the later years, she was concerned about what he might do.
How he could retaliate, you mean, if something happened that he didn't like?
Yes. And I'd try and explore that. I'm like, well, what on earth is he going to do? Like, just cut him off, you know, what's wrong with you? That sort of, you know, that very blinkered view, I guess. But it was really came to a head when she let him move in. He sold his property. She did say to me she felt sorry for him. because he had nowhere to go. She said he could stay at her place temporarily. She was looking at trying to get him somewhere to board or live around where she was, so he could come up there and stuff, but not live there as such.
I imagine once he was in the house, it would be very difficult to get him out.
Yep.
The property that you're talking about was a house in Strathmore, and that other lady, Karen Catapan, we were talking about, she loaned him a large amount of money to help him buy that property.
Yeah.
And in 2005, so way back at the beginning of their relationship, and then he took in boarders there as a source of income as well. I believe she lived there for a period of time.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know how he ended up with no money at your mum's house, but it seems to be that sort of bloke. I mean, in the end, he's 69 years old with a lot of chat, but nothing sort of to show for his life, wasn't he?
Well, he had a lot of caveats on that property.
What does that mean?
It means that he owed a lot of people a lot of money. He got left with very little at the end. There was not much left. I'm talking thousands, as in not tens of thousands, thousands. Different lawyers had caveats and various other bods around town. I don't even know, but quite a few lawyers did, I think.
He was the sort of bloke who had a lot of associates, if I can put it that way. I wouldn't call them friends necessarily, but a lot of arrangements with people. If we go back again, this is a big year for him, 2004. That was the year not only that he met Karen Catapan, but also that he was involved with the law for the first time that I can make out. And that was a domestic violence issue, wasn't it? And that was when he was deemed ineligible to own firearms. And I'm reading in the report, the coroner's report, something I had no idea of, and I wonder if you did before, that it's common practice for people when they are banned from owning firearms and they really like them, to organise for them to be sold to their friends, and then maybe they get them back a bit down the line.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, of course I didn't have any idea about that.
No.
I knew very little about all that stuff. I knew that he'd had them, and I know that I'd asked Mum about them. I'd said, do you think he still has them? No, he's told me that he, so-and-so, some bloke's got them. And are you sure? This was towards the very end. And I say all this because there were some other comments he'd made to her that were alarming, and she knew that he had to get out of the house. He had to leave. She was trying to establish how to get him out in a safe way.
Turns out that the firearms, all of the firearms that he had confiscated, actually turned up in the ownership of friends and associates of his and in various gun safes around Melbourne.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah. And some of these men said later that they didn't even know that they were signing documents to buy the firearms. That one bloke said, he just bought me these documents and I signed them. I didn't fill them out. He filled them out. I just signed the blank documents. He filled them out later. There was also a common thread where people were saying that they did what he wanted because they didn't want to make him angry. Did your mum or did you ever see temper? Was that a fixture of their relationship?
I certainly didn't, and I never heard of any word of any type of temper, any physical assault, never, nothing. I mean, manipulative, well, definitely.
Coercive?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that a lot, possibly, yeah.
I mean, the fact that he managed to get into your mum's house
100%.
to stay at the end when she was already thinking, how do I get rid of this guy?
Yeah.
That's pretty coercive and manipulative, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, she lent him money and things, and
I don't know if you haven't, and I pray you haven't, ever been in an abusive relationship. It actually kind of sounds standard, to be honest. It's a horrible, but I think maybe because you just had more faith in your mum, to not end up in this situation.
Well, and I guess it's something that certainly my sister and I can't speak for my brother, but after she died and we found out that, that at the coroner's court, the family violence team were looking at investigating. We're like, what? Family violence? What the fuck? What do you mean? We're like, no, what are they talking about? Honestly, this was our response. We're like, what on earth are they saying here? Because to us, this was a very foreign concept.
Yeah.
You know, we had that very traditional view of what family violence was, which was, you know, your husband beats you up. And
yeah, black eyes and yeah.
Very physical. And we're like, oh, and then we're like, well, of course we didn't class him as being part of the family either.
I think that's really valuable what you're saying because, I mean, from my perspective, we're talking about a woman who was murdered by her partner.
Yeah.
And you're saying that months afterwards at the inquest, you kids were like, family violence? No, that wasn't what happened. Because I guess it was unfathomable that your fabulous mum was in a domestic violence situation.
Yeah, exactly. And something so unimaginable, you know, just completely out of the blue. So that was confronting that whole notion of family violence and how it evolves.
Bisucci had a psychologist that he'd been seeing for many years. This bloke told the coroner that he developed a pattern where he would come when his mental health was really low, he'd come and seek help, but then at some point he'd decide he was cured and stop coming. At some point, I believe your mum went to have a session with him and the doctor. According to the inquest, it was an appointment to try and get the psychologist to help her negotiate with him.
Yes, so he said. All I know is that Bisucci would do just that. He would go because he had an ulterior motive, my analysis is, and it was a psychiatrist. He would go there because he needed something. He might be in trouble, he needs a letter for court, who knows.
The psychiatrist had meetings, he'd had appointments prior to this with Bisucci's first wife and his other partner, and he said that neither of them during their appointments had ever disclosed any kind of violence in the relationship, but subsequently, when they spoke to police after the death of your mum, they disclosed that there was domestic violence in both of those relationships. They both reported that, and in fact, Ms. Catapan reported that he'd also been violent to the tenants who were living in that house that they bought together.
Yes.
So it seems like a lot of people knew different things about this guy, but the information wasn't really coming together.
Yes, the puzzle was fragmented because I think he'd burn his bridges. And by the time he got to stay at Mum's, I'd say he'd burn every bridge under the sun.
Yes, I believe that was his vibe when she said that she wanted him to leave, wasn't it? He was sort of saying, well, there goes my financial security.
Yeah, so bye-bye to you. That's what I think happened that very day because she was meant to come out to meet me and she didn't turn up. So there was something, you know, wrong, clearly.
So when she didn't turn up, which is weird, what did you think?
Oh, I knew something was wrong because she'd already texted me that morning at 9:30 and said, I'll be leaving in about half an hour. And, you know, I only live 20 minutes away. So by 11 and she wasn't here, and it's like, oh, what are you doing to me? I've got 3 young kids. I'm dying here. Hurry up, hurry up.
Yeah.
Texting, nothing. She was someone who always had her phone by her and was always looking things up and, I'll look that up. And so for her not to respond was pretty weird. And then I was ringing and by 1 o'clock I knew something drastic was wrong because I also knew that he was there. Had been there that morning. She said, I'm trying to get him out and I'll be over as soon. Like he'll go to work or I'll get him to the shrink. So I called my siblings and they hadn't heard from her either. And then we made a plan and my brother and I went up there to see what was going on. So not ideal with 3 kids in the car.
Your little kids were in the car?
Yeah. It was mid-afternoon. And I'm like, I'm just waiting for them to wake up. Well, I'll whip up there. I didn't have a key, so I had to wait for my brother. Went up there and they're just, I mean, they were very young. So they were just sitting in the car waiting. And then, you know, all this sort of played out.
You found your mum's body in her house?
Well, not exactly. We found his body first.
Oh, I see. Oh, my God.
Yeah, so with his head blown off. But of course, that wasn't what my brain computed at the time. So it was all a very hectic situation. We didn't get beyond him, I guess I'll put it that way. So we didn't know where she was at that point. But I was trying to proceed in to find her. But then my brother, was saying, no, we have to get out and everything, because he'd clocked things that I hadn't at that point. He'd seen the weapon I hadn't, or he'd seen a bullet or something, or a shell casing that I hadn't. I'd seen him, but I saw something that I thought I saw something that was different from what I really saw.
Yeah.
To put it this way.
Yeah.
Because the brain went into protective mode, I think.
That's understandable. And also, I wouldn't think you'd want to stand there and look for too long.
No. And then we went out and called the police. Well, my brother did. And then he goes, I think this is a murder-suicide, to the people on the phone. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Really? That was the first time it occurred to you when he said that?
Yes, because for some reason, I just walked in. When I saw him, I actually thought, I don't know. I know what I thought. I said to him, has he tried to commit suicide? I'd seen something, but I thought half his body was covered by the angle I was on. I thought the couch was obscuring half of him, but it's because this was not there.
Oh.
And there were bits, places, and I'm like, what's that? And crazy stuff, right?
But your brother guessed. He put it together.
Yeah, he saw, I think he must have seen different things to me. Well, he was ahead of me too, so.
I mean, just from what you're saying now, so you and your brother have never spoken about it, never gone back over it?
God, yes, we have.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
I was going to say, me and my brother would have gone over it a million times.
Oh, God, yeah. We were, playing the whole thing out, all of us. Yeah. No stone was unturned there.
No.
So, yeah, when I heard that, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And the police, and then he's going, I'm fucking serious. Like, I don't think they were taking him for real.
Yeah.
Just get someone here now, And then they were there very quickly, actually, I have to say. And then we were just stuck there for hours. The media was there before half the police. So that was an interesting eye-opener to the media, how they find things out.
And filming you and all of that when you're sort of wandering around dazed.
And, I had my kids there. It was a debacle. And my sister was actually interstate, so that was really bad because she knew that we were about to go in, and then I rang her with some cryptic message because I couldn't tell her, and
yeah,
she had to get back from interstate. And, yeah, so she met us at the scene. By this point, we'd been there for hours, So that was bad. It was all bad.
But it's sort of levels of bad, isn't it? You think you know what bad is, and then all of a sudden this day happens, and it's like...
Yeah. Yeah.
If you'd like to talk to someone about abuse that's taken place in your life, no matter how long ago it happened, your GP is always a good place to start. If that's not going to work for you, you can contact 1800-RESPECT on 1800-737-732 or via their website 1800respect.org.au. Or you can call Lifeline's 24-hour phone counselling service on 13 11 14.
Do your children remember that day?
No. Well, certainly the younger two wouldn't. The eldest, no. No. I even asked them, do you remember her? And I think there's remembering, and then there's photos, talk. They think they remember her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think so. My eldest said, no, I don't remember. I said, do you remember when she came and looked after you, or do you remember this or that in particular? And no. Even though my son, who was 6 months at the time, says, I remember her. I wish she hadn't killed her. You know, it was so sweet.
It is.
and sad. It's like, how dare you rob my children of a grandmother?
Mm. How did you tell them?
Yeah, that was a big thing because they were so little.
Mm.
They didn't know what death was. We'd never had a reason to discuss it. But by the age of 4, we had no pets. Nothing had died. No one had died. So we're like trying to explain this concept of death. And it's like, well, do you put a religious overtone? You know, we're not overly religious.
I'm the same. I know what you mean.
Do you put a religious tone on it? How do you do this?
Ours was a dog, so wasn't as dramatic as yours, but it was the similar sort of, oh, I've never talked about heaven before, but suddenly I want to talk about heaven, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. Well, and like, oh, the spirit's leaving the body. Well, that's a bit much, isn't it, for a 4-year-old? I can't even understand this. It happened over time, I guess, you know, over the years. So initially, and the other thing is that my niece and nephew, my niece was a bit older than my children, so she had more awareness and was asking many more questions, you know. So we had to sort of bide our time, and we, meaning different members of the family, had different views on what they wanted their children to know.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was just a minefield, you know, even from the funeral, like, do we take them, do we not take them? I want them to be there, but I don't want them to be there. Oh, you know, all these decisions that had to be made that just shouldn't have even had to be made. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, in the shadow of the fact that it's a murder. It's not just that grandma died.
Yeah, exactly. We just said that the police were looking into it. We basically didn't know what had happened, which is actually true. We don't know what happened for sure. We've got all the surrounding circumstances and the facts that we've been able to establish, but right down to the why, we don't actually know. We don't know if she was held at gunpoint for hours. We don't know. You know, that sort of stuff was really important to us to want to understand, and we never got an answer to that.
So all you know is that you heard from her at about 9 a.m. saying she was planning to leave in the next
half hour.
Yeah, half an hour. And then you got to the house mid-afternoon and it was all over.
Yeah, it had been over since, I reckon, before 11 a.m. I reckon in that half hour, I reckon she was preparing to leave. She wanted him out of the house. She wouldn't leave him there alone. She either said get out permanently or just get out for now, or I don't know. And then that was it. He rampaged out and got his gun out of the boot.
These guns that he wasn't supposed to have.
After we came out and were waiting for the police, the car boot was up and we were looking in there. It's like, oh my God, like there were just boxes and boxes of ammunition. I mean, that's a whole nother story. There was, you know, he had other cars around the side of the street. I mean, this is the stuff we found out to tell the police the next day. You know, so we were concerned about what else was in Mum's house. There was bullets in a box at the front door that either had fallen in on his travels in from outside or parading around. Like, I guess, you know, we were trying to work out a theory as to, you know, had he held her at gunpoint for some time and then done it, and then how long between him doing that to him doing it himself. But, I mean, it would suggest that from the scene that he probably didn't wait very long after he killed Mum. But who bloody knows, you know?
It never occurred to me that those sorts of questions, I mean, I didn't even think of those questions. But now that you're talking about it, I realise, yeah, of course you'd want to know as much as you could about.
Oh, we wanted to know every minute detail. And I know some people don't. Some families are not interested, but we were all absolute. We needed it to be able to process in our minds. And the things that we were told, not told things by crime scene cleaners that shouldn't have spoken when they did, told us things that really didn't help, in fact made things worse, you know, meant that we even wanted to know more. And then, of course, the police didn't want to tell us too much because they had their views that remember your mum like she was. Well, no, actually, I'd like to know what happened, you know, because, of course, they're concerned about what information they're giving away, what can then be used against them, i.e. if they re-traumatise us and we sue Victoria Police.
Also, they'd have known would be an inquest. So even though there'd be no trial, they knew that everything they did would end up under scrutiny.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole concept in itself, that there was no trial and only an inquest, that frankly we had to bloody well fight for. It didn't just come.
It's interesting that you had to fight for it because there are a number of really key issues at play in the inquest, aren't there? There are the issues around psychology and psychiatry, and the fact that the psychologist said that he didn't have specific training in domestic violence situations. And there are issues around the gun laws, around the fact that people can use loopholes to get their firearms back when they're banned. There are a lot of pretty important issues that came out of your mum's death.
And all of those issues, do you think they've done anything about any of them?
Have they not?
Donuts.
It's 2021, the inquest?
Yes, it was, yep. Vic Pol don't have enough resources, the usual story, blah, blah, blah. Even the Attorney General's response, I mean, the responses are on the website. You can see them for yourself. You know, they're all just, terrible. But, we're not going to be doing anything in this space. And I think that the College of Psychiatrists may have recommended something, but it's certainly not compulsory. I think it's an elective, CPD educational session. My thoughts are that at the coroner's court was that it's very sad that a 90-year-old lady has died and is potentially being looked at the coroner's court because she died in a hospital and there was something untoward. But why can't the families have a special person that we speak to that is always there and available, and our cases are put to the top of the list as opposed to, all this waiting around for years. People wait for years to have their matters heard.
There's no liaison person from the coroner's court?
There was. But then, of course, as soon as we started throwing our weight around and getting lawyers involved, they shut us down. And in fact, the words were, "We don't speak to families who have lawyers."
That's shocking.
I am still fuming about that.
That's unbelievable.
I said, "Are you for real?" Like, I was fuming. Eventually, once His Honour came on, things went well. But up until that point, we were shut down.
In the process of the inquest, when you and your family were sitting there hearing so much information that you hadn't known before, tell us about that feeling. Were you angry? Well, I mean, I know we're angry with him, obviously, but is there any anger for other people, for his associates who helped him keep the firearms? Or
there's anger. There's anger towards. There's still annoyance that the guy who was holding the firearms never basically got charged with such at the time. The police went over to that house. They went there. They weren't there, the guns. Why didn't they follow up?
Yeah, there's a Mr. Camucciano who...
That's him.
He was the licensed holder of most of the firearms.
That's right. So we were very pissed off that he was not charged.
And there was another bloke, another associate, Mr. De Maria, who called I think he signed a few of these forms as well. He called the registry about firearms in 2008 to report that he didn't have the firearms that he realised by that stage were in his name. And he was told it was not to worry about it. It was fine. He told them where they were, that they were in Mr. Bisucci's gun safe. Mr. Bisucci had already been banned from having firearms. So he tipped them off, essentially, and nothing happened.
Nothing to see here, that's right.
Which again brings us back to, the recommendations of the coroner. There are serious issues.
Yeah, the registry is a complete joke. And again, these were questions we were asking, not anybody else. We want to know how many firearms are in this bin. There's this, there was a term for it, the recon bin.
Yeah. Well, it's the police missing list, right? I've got a quote here from Coroner Kane, who says that there are over 101,000 firearms currently on the police missing list known as the recon bin. The list includes a mix of those reported lost, stolen or destroyed without record.
Mm.
So we hear about a lot of shootings in the community, and I'm sure I'm not the only person thinking, didn't we have a gun buyback? I thought no one was supposed to have guns in Australia, but clearly there's still plenty around, and this 108 in Victoria alone would certainly account for some of them.
Yep, 100%. And, I mean, I think it must have been shortly either later that year that the coroner's decision, maybe a bit later on, 6 to 12 months, there was another amnesty announced that, you know, people could hand them in, no questions asked.
But your case is a separate issue altogether, isn't it? We're talking about a man who had been judged inappropriate to own firearms and they'd been taken from him, but he'd used a very simple loophole to get them all back. So that's a whole other level of problem.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, why didn't the police follow up more rigorously once they knew that Carmucciano or the other guy didn't have them and, you know?
And it was a lot. It was a lot of guns as well.
Yeah.
What would you say to anyone listening who's, let's really narrow it down, whose mum, and again, I say that because my mum's in the early 70s, and it's a bit of a tightrope to walk because you don't want to infantilise your parents. My mother is also an intelligent, independent person. I would find it difficult to say to her that anything she was doing was silly or, what are you doing, Mum? I would find it really difficult to talk to my mum like that.
Mm.
What do you say to people who might find themselves in a similar situation? Was there any way you could have handled it differently, do you think?
I mean, I'd made suggestions even in the week, like I think it might have even been 2 weeks before, about getting people over to her place to help remove him.
Yeah.
Males to come and help remove him. And I understand that another friend of Mum's husband's had also offered to go and, you know, extract him. But I think but when even that was mentioned, she said, oh, well, I'm worried about what he's going to do. And I thought, well, I've said, well, what the hell do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's got firearms? No, I don't think so. She still didn't think so.
I mean, I always say, you know, one woman in Australia is murdered every 4 or 5 days now by an intimate partner or a former intimate partner. And I always ask the question, where is next week's woman right now?
Yeah.
Does she realise she's in danger? Oftentimes they do. And oftentimes, but it seems silly, it seems overreacting, or just not really quite sure what to do about it.
I mean, I think the response in the general community around intervention orders is much more, there's a great deal of focus on those. So they're issued at the drop of a hat now to the point where it's gone beyond, you know, they're being manipulated. That is for sure. I've seen that myself.
Yeah, but they're also very ineffective.
Exactly. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They're a piece of paper, and if the person's hell-bent on doing something, they'll do it regardless. If there'd been one here, this joker would have no doubt broken it.
Well, yeah, he had done before.
Yeah, exactly.
And the worst thing seems to have happened to him, which was that he lost his firearms, but he got them all back. So I can't imagine he would have feared an intervention order. Why would he?
No, precisely.
Your demeanour is delightful. I mean, you've chuckled through this horrible conversation, and it makes me wonder how much of that is your mum. As I say, I get the impression that she was a very vivacious woman. Does that come from her?
She certainly was in her later years. I don't know that she was as a younger woman. But, yeah, she was full of life and, you know, would go on adventures and, you know, she didn't actually need this person. She went on trips. She, you know, went on trips with people she didn't know, you know. So she was social. She was able to strike up conversations and stuff. So I don't know
She doesn't seem vulnerable in any way that I can put my finger on.
No, she, how there's some elderly 70-year-olds and there's young people couldn't believe my mum was, 70. It's like, oh my God, she's in such good shape. And, and she was very busy and shooting around and, didn't rely on people to do things for her,
So why is it, do you think, that you chuckle through this conversation? Is that a coping mechanism you've developed?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I like to talk about it.
Okay.
In a strange way. I mean, it's like I want her to be remembered. There's so many things I could talk about, like, not only her death, but how the people left behind cope or don't cope and what they need to help cope. And I mean, that's a whole nother conversation that I'm trying to do some work around advocacy at the moment, because it's just the whole system is not geared to actually support people after these events. And there's so much focus on prevention. And of course, 100% we need to focus on that. But I'm sorry, it's going to take a long time before someone is not killed, ever. This 0% hope of getting to. I mean, come on, really?
Well, that's it. I mean, we have talked about family violence, intimate partner violence for a long, long time now in Australia. Yes, we didn't talk about it properly for a long time, but now it feels like there are constant announcements about initiatives, funding, but we're not getting anywhere.
No.
It's not shifting the dial at all.
And I mean, I'm now doing some work myself with victims of crime in a legal capacity. I'm acting for them as victims of crime. And just yesterday, the amount of cases I was going through that are domestic violence, I'm like, oh my God, this is just one after the other. It's just non-stop. And these are the women who, they're not in the news, and hopefully they won't be, because they've gotten away from these blokes. But, I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah. If you read the coroner's reports as they come out, the findings, it's the same. It's the vast majority are family domestic violence.
Mm.
How do you and your family, how has it affected relationships? I mean, you guys are part of the kind of headline that we see, maybe once a fortnight at least, man and woman found dead in residence. Police say they were known to each other. And that's usually the last we hear about it. And that's the sort of headline there would have been about your mother.
Yeah.
So how does it play out differently for everybody?
Some of the things I really hate is, oh, how did your mum pass away? Did she have cancer?
Yeah.
Like, no. It's like, do I tell them? Do I not?
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about it. I think they think they'll upset you, but it's okay to just say it as it is, because it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an illness. And this was one of the things that we did struggle with the coroner's office, was that there's all this waiting. Like, we wanted answers and we needed them at the time to be able to take that next step forward. For example, there was something on the floor at Mum's that I didn't know what it was, and it was really bugging me. What was that thing I saw? Because I couldn't actually move forward mentally until I knew, and the police wouldn't tell me, and I insisted, and, finally they told me. It was skin off his face. I thought it was bandages. Once I knew that, my mind was at ease. Well, not at ease, but, it actually was, that makes sense. Next thing, move on now. It really made a big difference to know that. Something as small as that wasn't re-traumatizing me. It was actually assisting my move forward. But it's like they knew better than I did as to what I needed psychologically.
Yeah, that's really tricky, isn't it? They're saying, no, you want to remember your mum as she was, and not listening if you're saying, yeah, but this is really important to me too. Knowing how she died is, I get their experience, I get that, but yeah, there needs to be some kind of very serious psychological intervention in between, I think. someone to support you, and if you want to know something, to help you know it in a supportive way, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And it was just like there were barriers at every turn. You know, we would ring the coroners, what's happening. No one would want to talk to us. A year after the event, you know, we hear from someone in there saying, oh, we're just touching base to let you know that we're here. Well, hello? You're a year too late, mate.
Mm.
And, you know, we're pushing, well, what's happening? Is there going to be an inquest? Is there going to be an inquest? And all this pressure on us. It's sort of like there's two options. You wait and see if an inquest is going to occur, but once that decision's been made, it's too late to then ask for one.
Mm.
So you had to preempt whether they were going to call one or not.
3.5 years in between your mum's death and the inquest beginning, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but, you know, they wouldn't answer questions and all this sort of business. Anyway, the upshot is that one finally occurred, which was good, and we were all pleased that it had, and that we found out as much as we could about what went on and what shouldn't have happened and what should have happened and all the rest. I mean, it didn't go as far as to say that it could have been prevented by a certain body or certain things that did or didn't happen, but, you know, still we found out as much as we could. And, you know, we wanted things from that. We wanted to see photos. We wanted the autopsy report. We wanted things, and I don't know, a lot of people don't not harass, but, you know,
yes,
persist.
Well, that's what you need your lawyer for, right? Because otherwise no one's checking in with you if you're sitting there in the gallery.
No.
So you need a lawyer, which you have to pay for,
Yep,
to represent what you want to know, your thoughts, your desires.
and it outrages me that, you know, we were fortunate enough to be in the position to be able to pay for a lawyer to represent us. But there's many people who wouldn't even know that that's an option.
So they're just bystanders.
Yeah, they just don't get a say.
No.
You know, their interests are not necessarily considered. I just find that to be disgusting. And to just even at the time to be ringing up the coroners, where's the body, what's happening? If you don't speak English, you don't know the system, where are you going to be? It's disgusting. I am a practicing lawyer. A criminal lawyer. I knew the system and I thought I did. Let's put it that way. It's different when the shoe's on the other foot, I can say that much. So that's been a very eye-opening experience. But now I'm doing work with victims of crime as a lawyer that I wasn't doing before.
So did you work in defence in criminal justice?
Yes. So I was on leave because I was on maternity leave at the time. When I eventually did go back to work, it's like, I don't know if I can work with these people again. I don't know how can I do this? So there was a lot of questioning about what I was going to do, and, oh God, you know, this is really confronting. So the long story short is that I did work in a different area for a while, but now I'm working for myself.
I was wondering if, I mean, I don't want to diagnose you with PTSD, but
I've had that, yeah.
I would think so. I didn't want to be as presumptuous, but I would guess so. And
absolutely, yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, I'm nothing like I was after the event. You know, back then I was very, you know, hyper vigilant and everything, and thinking everyone was holding a gun, and, you know, it was really terrible. And, you know, thinking about it all, that's all that consumed my mind. Now it's not like that. I mean, I think about her every day, but I don't go over it all, you know, blow by blow. I think the jokes and the black humour and all that, I mean, that's my nature anyway, but I think that's, you know, it's definitely a coping mechanism. I mean, but what can you do? You just have to get on.
And especially if you want to talk about it for various reasons, I guess you have to find a way to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I think people shy away from it, or they have, you know, ideas on, oh, it's all over now, isn't it? The thing with your mum, just because she's dead and buried doesn't mean it's over. It's never going to be over in our lives. And it just, in fact, you know, I was just talking to someone about this the other day, the intergenerational trauma, I guess. You know, fancy having a discussion with an 8-year-old about
I can't.
Well, in fact, he was way younger than that when I said that a man had killed her and shot her. I mean, that was my choice. Some people wouldn't choose to tell their children something so graphic, but I didn't want secrets. But, you know, how that's going to play out in years to come, I don't know.
Yeah.
You just do the best you can at the time. You know, having met a couple of other victims, although their experiences occurred, you know, some decades ago, just having that meeting with them, meeting them, we still chat, we're doing some work together. It's so powerful. It really was an amazing turn in my recovery anyway. Just that someone who really does get it. Different circumstances completely, but they do get it.
I've heard people who are members of victims of homicide groups say that. It's like a horrible club you would never want to join.
That's right.
You would never want anyone else to have to join, but it's invaluable if you have to be in it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Thank you to our guest today, Rebecca Burdon. If you need support after listening to this podcast, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 or contact 1800-RESPECT on 1800 737 732 or 1800respect.org.au. Indigenous Australians can contact 13 Yarn on 13 92 76 or 13yarn.org.au.
The producers of this podcast recognise the traditional owners of the land on which it's recorded. They pay respect to the Aboriginal elders past, present and those emerging.